same thing, and it's just that Angelo and Mary Jane Mira are against drilling, or against this resolution. And it's the same as the other letters. Now I'm gonna start taking questions or comments from, how long are you gonna take? All the people put together so far.
The question is how long I'm going to be. I only plan to be 2 minutes or whatever is allowed. If I'm allowed, or if it's desired, and I'm totally neutral, but since Mr. Colley spent...
Use the mic.
Is there any are there any rules in this? Do you never enforce any rules? Or we all going to be speaking out like Ms. Dorsey here?
You've been
Like
doing
you
all
just
right.
did?
You've done it twice.
Well, why don't you maintain order?
Let's go back to normal.
I'm waiting for you to maintain order.
I'm waiting for you to shut up. So, Mr. McCarthy asked how long I was going to be. My plan is to be only 2 or 3 minutes, whatever is supposed to be available to people on the privilege of the floor. Mr. Colley spent most of his time talking about me, and I don't want to use my time rebutting that, but if and only if I'm honestly neutral, if the board would like me to respond, I will, but I'm going to use my 2 to 3 minute time to talk about something else. And I need assistance here. Here, you would hold this up for me. Basically, over here, I'm going to focus on the board. That's what I'm speaking to. I'm talking to you guys. I stand over here. The subject of industrial scale drilling is a highly charged one. There is a tremendous amount of misinformation out there about whether drilling has or has not been proven safe, what the law is or isn't. And by the way, a lot of views, opinions even, have been expressed tonight about what the law is. Many of the people who have expressed those views have not said whether they are lawyers, but they're not. Some of the people have said they aren't lawyers. I am a lawyer, and I've been a lawyer for over 31 years.
2 in New York.
And the way it works is that the New York Bar Association, who decides who can practice law, their rule is that if you move to this state and you have practiced at least 5 years somewhere else, in a state that lets New York lawyers do what I'm about to tell you, then you don't even have to take the bar exam. Because as far as they're concerned, if you practice 5 years somewhere else, you are indeed allowed to practice in New York. So they at least think that 31 years is meaningful. But let me say, I apologize for, I'll try not to respond even when there is a response from the audience. All right, so as I said, there's a lot of misinformation about what the law is or isn't, about what kind of unintended impacts could occur if unconventional drilling is allowed into a town. Some of this misinformation appears to be spread in good faith, simply the product of honest error, and some appears to be spread seemingly without regard for the actual facts. Obviously and appropriately, Amphenol is an extremely important stakeholder in this community. Yesterday, a local businessman circulated an email that implied that Amphenol had a high level of concern that its business somehow would be adversely affected by the moratorium that is the subject of tonight's hearing. That businessman circulated a copy of an email from an employee of Amphenol, which, according to the local businessman who circulated it, supposedly demonstrated that Amphenol believed its business would be hurt by this moratorium. Well, here is a copy of that email. I have extra copies. If anybody wants to see me afterwards, I've got copies for you. This email does not say that Amphenol believes it will be hurt by the proposed moratorium. In fact, it is not even an official communication on behalf of Amphenol. Rather, it is from and contains the personal opinion of a resident who happens to be in senior management at Amphenol. Sorry. That individual is apparently against the proposed moratorium, and of course, he has every right to have and express an opinion. But everyone needs to understand that this email does not even pretend to express Amphenol's opinion about anything, not the proposed moratorium or anything else. Much of this email sets forth the writer's understandable sadness at how the town has deteriorated since he moved here in 1972.
Can I ask you to be quiet?
That's all right.
Is that-
I'll just speak louder and louder. And he's also concerned about the atrophy of the economy over the past 40 years. Totally separate and aside from drilling issues, the writer observes that the town is already handicapped by high taxes and high wages in this area. Now, as an aside, query whether the high wages in this area problem of which the writer speaks would really be made better or worse by allowing industrial scale gas drilling in. As I've already noted, this email is not from Amphenol, and truth be told, does not even pretend to be anything other than the writer's individual opinion about the proposed moratorium. The writer opens by referring to himself as a town resident, and he closes by describing himself as a concerned citizen. Indeed, in the entire 300-plus word communication, there is only one sentence as to the writer's view about the moratorium as it could affect Amphenol. Here is that sentence. I am not convinced that we can assure Amphenol with a continuous supply of local natural gas if we eliminate the closest source here in Sydney. So, the objection appears to be that if the town imposes a moratorium, then for some reason, Amphenol might not have a source of gas. The writer is absolutely entitled to his opinion, whether on the subject of high wages in this area are stifling the economy, on the subject of the moratorium, or any other subject. But factually, there is absolutely no rational reason to believe that Amphenol will be deprived of an ample source of gas if the town imposes a moratorium. First of all, I have read scores, maybe hundreds, of gas leases, and I have never seen even one that promised that the gas mined thereby would stay within the locality from which it was fracked, or for that matter, that it would even stay in this state or in this country.
Just look at PA.
Please. No, the reason fracking companies want to frack is so they can sell gas to the highest bidder, which these days is China, India, and other non-U.S. users.
Made in USA, being sold, yeah.
Industry plans to sell this gas outside the country to the highest bidder. Those plans are well known and undisputable, and even such corporate giants as Dow Chemical, which uses natural gas as a feedstock, have complained quite publicly about the gas company's plans to ship this gas overseas, because exporting this gas, no matter how much extra there might be, drives up the price for domestic users, such as you and me, and Dow Chemical, and Amphenol. Woo! But back to the writer's personal concern that somehow his employer could run out of gas if Sydney enacts a moratorium. Whether or not Sydney enacts a moratorium, there is no meaningful chance that Amphenol or any other employer in town will run out of gas. Says who? Well, says the National Petroleum Council's 2011 report to the United States Department of Energy. That National Petroleum Council's report to the DOE made it clear that, even taking into account rising consumption levels, and I have a copy of this, which I'm going to give to the board with these sites, North America has an ample supply of gas for decades to come. So, in conclusion, the email submitted by someone other than the writer, in fairness, to demonstrate that Amphenol is concerned that its business will be hurt by a local moratorium, in fact, does not demonstrate that. The email is certainly a valuable resource to inform this debate, as it reflects the personal opinion of a long-term resident who is in a position to know and understand the last almost half-century of history in this town. But even then, that personal opinion contains only one single sentence as to that writer's view of the impact that a local drilling moratorium would have on Amphenol. And that single sentence, which I've highlighted in yellow and red there, is that the writer is concerned that enacting a drilling moratorium might somehow result in Amphenol not having a sufficient source of natural gas.
Dun, dun, dun.
The writer has the right to his personal opinion about anything, but at some point we might all want to focus on facts. Natural gas is fungible, and based on how markets function, and based on what the National Petroleum Council itself says in its recent report to the United States Department of Energy, there is no meaningful chance that enacting a moratorium in Sydney will somehow result in the email writer's employer not being able to find gas at a fair price. I'm going to provide copies of this, and I'm asking the clerk to please enter a copy of this in the official records of this hearing. Thank you.
Where are you from? Excuse me, sir. Sir. Question,
I'm
sir.
not taking questions.
Where are you from? Where are you from? Where do you come from? Where do you pay taxes?
Where I come from, and as a lawyer, a public hearing is not a place for...
I don't care. You don't care what happens to us.
I think everybody can hear me from here. My name is Bruce Hodges, and I am Local Lodge 1529 President of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers. I represent those overpaid workers he was just talking about there. I represent 1,000 members. No, I'm not a resident of Sydney. I live in Oneonta. I've worked in Sydney since 1979. The email that he put up there was, yes, from a citizen. That is also Rick Aiken. He's the plant manager. He's like the top guy in Sydney. I think he is more than just the average Joe writing an email to somebody. I can tell you that we have a relatively good working relationship with the management of Amphenol, but I rarely have Rick Aiken want to sit down and talk with me about something as important as he felt this was. And we had a very long talk about it. So I can assure everybody in this room that Amphenol is concerned about this. Now, as I mentioned, I represent 1,000 people. Some of them are for this drilling, some of them are against it. So obviously, I got to be careful because I represent all those folks. What they all have in common is they do enjoy working at Amphenol and they do need their jobs. That is the most important thing. That's what they all have in common. And we don't want to do anything. We obviously dodged a huge bullet after going through a flood 5 years ago. Pretty much the management said, if this happens again, folks, it's game over. We're going to have to leave town. And we were very fortunate that after going through this again, and the hard work that all of my folks, a lot of them are here tonight, our hourly folks and the salary folks over in Amphenol went through to get that plant back up and running. And after a lot of hard work from the village, the town, state officials, all kinds of people put together a package to convince them to stay here. Because in this global economy, we've seen a lot of jobs go. They've got a lot of reasons to leave New York State, even leave the country. We were very fortunate they decided to stay here. There's a lot of 30-year people over there. We don't want to go out looking for another job. We got 30 years there. We want to be able to retire from there. Part of that package was a financial package from New York State. Part of it was cheaper electricity, and part of it was access to natural gas. It's like a trifecta that they needed to have to be convinced to stay in this state. So basically, my concern representing the 1,000 members that I have over there that work in Amphenol is that we don't want to see any moratorium passed that's going to impact anything that Amphenol's got planned right now. And regardless of what was written in an email, I can tell you I've been there since '79. I've been president for 2 years. Whenever their costs go up, no matter what those costs are, okay, that cost is going to be made up somewhere else. And the easiest place for that to be made up
is to send jobs to China and send jobs to Mexico. And that means this community lose jobs, we lose revenue here, and it goes out of the country. We don't want to see that happen. So that's why we're concerned, that's why we're here, and that's why we're asking this town board to please not proceed on anything that will impact the plans that are in place to keep this company that's so important to this community in this town and in this village. I have a petition that I'd like to enter into the record for you folks. It's got just under 800 names of folks over in Amphenol that are very concerned about their jobs. They want to make sure that their jobs stay here in Sydney. And the bottom line is they want to stay working, and they hope that you folks do the right thing and make sure that they can maintain their jobs here in Sydney. Thank
My name is Ed Zangle, and I grew up in Worcester, New York. And I'm a geologist. I went to State SUNY Oneonta, got a degree in geology and hydrology, and then went to Southern Illinois University and got a degree in geophysics. And then I worked in the environmental field for about 9 years as an environmental geologist, overseeing cleanup and investigation of hazardous waste.
Use the microphone.
Then I went to law school at the University of Illinois. I practiced law in downtown Chicago with a litigation firm called Jenner & Block, and Wildman Herald, Allen & Dixon for approximately 9 years. And I've been out here, I've licensed to practice law in Illinois, New York, and Pennsylvania. I currently represent landowners who are negotiating oil and gas leases. What I'd like to say to you is that you guys have a very difficult decision. You can see it by the emotion that fills this room. And I'm sure Mr. Slotsky would agree that you could put 5 lawyers in a room and probably all of them would disagree on what the state of the law is on any given issue. And you've provided him with time to present what he believes the issue on home rule and your ability as a town board to pass bans and moratoriums. I think it would be wise for you, as well as many other town boards, to do your due diligence. You are representatives of the people. And then before you go off and make any decision, you should at least gather information from both sides. I'm going to give you a card of mine. And I invite you to ask me down and give me a time like you did with the society. And I'll walk you through my interpretation of law, as well as many people that agree with that what the town is considering doing is against the law. And then you can weigh it yourself. You can determine whether you believe him or you believe me. But it won't hurt to have the information. Okay? That's basic. I wasn't prepared to come down here and give a talk. I wish you well. And if you want me to spend a little bit of time with you and the rest of your citizens and walk through the pro side of this, I'd be happy to do it. Thank you very much.